You are the person who never says no. When a project appears with no name attached, your name gets attached. When the deadline compresses and someone has to absorb the pressure, that someone is you. When a colleague is overwhelmed, the ask lands in your inbox. You deliver every single time, and somehow none of it is moving your career forward. Here is the paradox at the center of this. The more indispensable you make yourself as an executor, the less visible you become as a candidate for leadership. Saying yes to everything is not a strategy. It is a position, and the organization placed you in it. By the end of this video, you are going to understand the exact mechanism that keeps the most reliable employees at the same level for years. And once you see it, you will never read a performance conversation the same way again. Here's what's actually happening inside the organization. Every team has a structural problem. Work exists in volumes that exceed formal headcount. Some of that work has no natural owner. Some of it is urgent and poorly scoped. Some of it is unglamorous, underdocumented, and difficult to push back on. The organization is not calculating cruelty when it sends that work in your direction. It is calculating convenience. When you say yes, you solve a problem. You fill a gap that would otherwise require negotiation, escalation, or the discomfort of a difficult conversation. Your manager does not sit at their desk and think, this person will never be promoted. Your manager thinks, this problem is now solved. Those two thoughts happen in completely different parts of the brain, and the distance between them is where careers stall. Reliability and promotability are not on the same axis. There's a senior analyst who's been at the same company for 4 years. In that time, she delivered every project on deadline. She covered 2 colleagues during extended absences. She onboarded 3 new hires from scratch, without being asked and without recognition. Her manager calls her the cornerstone of the team. She has applied for a senior role twice. Both times, the position went to an external candidate. When she asked for feedback, she was told she needed to show more leadership. What her manager could not say, and possibly did not fully understand themselves, is this. Her reliability had removed her from the frame the organization uses when it evaluates leadership candidates. She was not seen as someone who made decisions. She was seen as someone who executed them. That distinction is not a comment on her capability. It is a comment on how the organization had categorized her. And organizations act on their categories. Here's the part nobody warns you about. Saying yes to everything does not just keep you in place. It actively communicates the absence of judgment. Leadership, at every level, is partly defined by prioritization, the visible act of looking at a set of competing demands and determining which ones align with what actually matters. Every time you absorb every ask without filtering, the organization collects a data point. This person does not evaluate. This person executes. The organization is not hostile to executors. It needs them, but it does not move executors into roles that require strategic judgment because it has never observed strategic judgment from them. That evidence can only appear in a visible decision, and sometimes a visible decision looks like a no. Now here is the second consequence, and it escalates. The yes employee becomes load-bearing. Think of a structural wall inside a building. Some walls are decorative. Remove them and nothing changes. Load-bearing walls are different. Removing one creates a problem you did not previously have. When you become the person who absorbs every overflow, every under-delegated task, every problem with no clear owner, you become structurally necessary exactly where you are. Promoting you creates a gap. That gap needs to be filled. Filling it requires time, effort, and energy your manager does not want to spend. Keeping you in place costs nothing. Moving you upward costs something. The organization optimizes for the path of least disruption.
It is not that your manager is blocking your advancement. It is that advancing you creates a problem they do not currently have. And most people, most of the time, avoid creating new problems, especially when the current arrangement is running smoothly. Here's what happens in year 3 and year 4. You are no longer being assessed as a potential. You are being managed as a resource. The language your manager uses about you has quietly shifted. It moved from high performer to reliable contributor. Those two phrases sound similar. They are not similar. High performer implies trajectory. Reliable contributor implies stability. The organization does not promote its stable elements. It builds around them. It depends on them, and it leaves them exactly where they are. And now we reach the part that matters most. You did everything right. You were told that hard work was the path forward. You were told that reliability was what management valued. You were told that being a strong team player was what leadership noticed and rewarded. None of that was a lie. Reliability is valued. Hard work is noticed. Being dependable does matter. But none of those things were ever the selection criteria for advancement. The selection criteria were different. Nobody posted them. Nobody explained them during onboarding, during performance reviews, during any of the conversations where they could have been shared. You were operating with the official information, not the actual information. Organizations do not share their actual decision logic. They share the version that keeps people motivated and engaged. The real version runs separately, quietly, without announcement. The official logic says, perform well and you will progress. The actual logic says, be visible in moments of judgment, under conditions of real uncertainty, and you will be considered for roles that require the same. You were performing. You were not being seen deciding. That's the gap, and it was never yours to know about. Here's what actually governs advancement in most organizations. It is not output volume. It is decision visibility. The people who moved forward ahead of you were not always producing more. In several cases, they were producing less, but they were visible at the right moments. They were in rooms where trade-offs were being made. They were heard saying, this does not align with our priorities right now. They were associated with choices, not just delivery. The organization was not rewarding them for working harder. It was classifying them at a different level of abstraction, as people who evaluate, not merely people who execute. And classification in most organizations happens early and quietly. Once you are placed in the executor category, staying there requires no active decision from anyone. It simply continues. Reclassification, however, requires a signal. Not a larger project, not longer hours, not a more enthusiastic performance review, a different kind of behavior. The moment you decline something, calmly, with a reasoning that reflects an understanding of what actually matters to the team, the organization receives new information. It does not change everything at once, but it opens the file. It introduces ambiguity into a category that had been settled, and in that ambiguity, recategorization becomes possible. The yes employee is not behind. The yes employee has been running a strategy that was never designed to produce the outcome they were working towards. The system does not run on merit alone. It runs on pattern recognition. And the patterns you have established are not permanent. One visible decision, one considered no, one moment where you are seen evaluating rather than simply absorbing, that's where reclassification begins. That's corporate GPS, the map they never handed you.